Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Marcelle Pick. She is passionate about transforming the way women experience healthcare through an integrative approach. So Marcelle co-founded the world-renowned Women to Women Clinic in 1983, and her vision was to not only treat illness, but also help support her patients by proactively making healthier choices to prevent disease. And she has successfully treated thousands of individuals through her unique approach to wellness. You can find her at marcellepick.com. And she is someone that I have had the pleasure to get to know over the years. Part of us we were brought together by the love of dance. She's a ballroom dancer. I'm a hip hop dancer. But she has gone on to create a homeopathic weight loss solution. She is very passionate about Ozempic and the problems associated with Ozempic, and we're going to dive into that. But also, she has an amazing personal story where she had to fully let go of her life, essentially, and start all over again from scratch. And so this is a powerful episode, not only that's helpful for our health and the way that we look at our health and the way that we look at ourselves and our self-esteem, but also really understanding the concept of resilience and taking those low moments in your life and turning them around. So I really hope that you enjoy this episode. Marcelle, my dancing partner, my lady, the one I love to boogie with. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
I'm so happy you're here.
I am. We have so much to share, and dance is one of the things, but many others.
I know. So Marcelle and I've had the pleasure of getting to know Marcelle a little bit more every single year. And one of the things that I didn't know about her that I learned a few times ago when we got together is that she loves to ballroom dance. And of course, I love to hip hop dance, and they're different, but they're all about just being in the movement and feeling the groove and letting go of all that pressure and just dancing. So I always love talking to people that have that freedom, that freedom of dance. But hey, today I am going to literally just dive in. I just want to dive into, I don't want to call it the negative because it's not. But dive into the story, because I think out of the story, there's so many lessons and inspiration that come out of that. So I want you to kick it off by diving into what happened to you. This was in, I think, 2017, a huge life change. Can we just jump in onto this huge moment in your life? Oh, yes. Okay, let's do it.
So I had one of the largest online programs in the country. We had 2 million on our email list, and I was in a relationship with a business partner. We started in 2000. I was all about, oh my God, let's make a difference. It's going to be so amazing. And I had an evergreen contract, and he would not sign anything but evergreen, which meant no matter what, the contract was going on for me forever. But for him, he could end the contract in 2013. So I had written 3 books, had become pretty well known, and I think more than likely it was really all about I couldn't be controlled. Who knows what it was. In any case, the website was taken down and a lawsuit ensued for 5 years. And there was a point in which I just realized it was a line item for him. I didn't have all the insurance I had, believe it or not, his name was tied to. So I lost everything. And I woke up one day and my daughter was calling my name and she was not in my home. And she said, and by the way, there were 10 lawsuits, 7 each time it would be something different, a different copyright infringement or something. And then I was getting divorced at the same time, so 3 from my ex-husband. And I remember thinking to myself, how am I ever going to make it through this? And so what I realized at the time in 2013, I woke up, my daughter was calling my name, she wasn't there, and all I heard was her calling me, Mom, Mom, Mom. Woke up in this twilight state and just said surrender. And I did. I just gave it all up. So he got the email list, I started over. And I remember thinking to myself, how am I ever going to do this? But you know what helped me? It was dancing.
Yeah.
I was competing in dance, and I danced 5 nights a week. And what I have a video on my website, Dancing Saved My Life. And it really did, because when you're dancing, you can think of nothing else. And if I'm not paying attention, then I'm going to trip my partner, or I'm going to fall or something. So I realized that that was such an incredible thing. And now as I look back, what I realize is that life was doing this for me, not to me. But when I was in it, it felt like life was doing it to me.
It's so hard to let go, isn't it? I think I hear these stories, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, that's like legal battle, legal battle." And then we always have this desire to fight. It's like we have this desire to, especially if you have that survivalism mechanism, which I grew up in the modeling industry, right? Survive or die. Like you adapt, you figure it out, or you're out. Like we're trained a lot of that, I think, by our parents too. We're like, no, just keep chugging along. You just keep fighting. And there is so much power in surrender. And just saying, gosh, you know what? Have it. I'll just rebuild it. I don't need it. And the amount of growth that has to come from that is amazing. And I think it's interesting when you talk about dance, because dance saved my life as well. I was at my lowest. I was so disconnected with myself. I didn't want to be in my life. And I thought, what did I used to do that brought me so much joy? And it was music and dance. I've always loved music and dance. It's just me. And when I dance, as you know, because you've seen me, I don't have any idea what's going on around me. I don't know. I'm just moving. It is just a moment. And then when you start learning choreography too, you're thinking about, okay, my hand has to go here on this beat. Right. You forget about everything else in your life. And I think a lot of people, and I don't know what you feel about this, but as we get older, a lot of times we ditch the creative side of us for this analytical, we're going to solve everything, we're going to save everyone's problems, we're going to save ourselves, instead of just saying, what's fun? And what gives us that creative side of our brain that allows us to disconnect from all this thinking that we do on a daily basis. So you got rid of everything. So that was it. You were like, forget it. I'm rebuilding it. How did you rebuild it?
So unfortunately, much of the material that is actually still on his website was my IP. So now I have, 1,800 blogs on my website. So I recreated them all. I mean, I teach for the Institute of Functional Medicine. I knew all the information. It was my information. And I said, all right, so here we are. And we did it with my name. And here's the irony. This year in April, I get the name back, Women to Women, because it was in the cloud. I know. And people still remember the name because it was such a good name. So I'm going to reclaim that back. I think it's April 15th, 17th, somewhere around there. And we'll do the things that we need to do to get it back. But here's something really interesting. And that was about 2 years ago, someone reported me to the Attorney General's office for an ad I had on the radio. So I got to be in that world again to see how is that for me. And I complied. I changed all the little words, and I couldn't say this, could I say that. They checked every single supplement I had and all that kind of stuff. But this time around, it was, you can't scare me because I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm saying. So the first time around, I was terrified. The second time around, when I got the letter, it was like, wait. This will work out. This is fine. What was I putting out in the world that created some of this for myself, and how do I change it? So that fear's gone. And when you understand enough about this, you don't get scared anymore. It's like, okay, I obviously didn't learn something the first time around, and now I got it. So I'm going to do it really differently. And it really does make you stronger, and it makes you more resilient. I mean, my parents were Holocaust survivors. So talk about someone that really knows how to dig in, and I'll go through anything. Yeah. And I can kind of survive anything. It's not always so great because you really have a body here that has impact for sure. Mm-hmm. But when you start to go on a different level, which is, okay, there's a bigger piece to this that I can learn about for myself. How do I not have it bring me down? How do I learn from the experience and change it the next time around, and change my vibration and change me? I mean, that's really what it was all about.
Do you actively meditate or do vision boards? How did you, because I think what I hear all the time is that people are like, yeah, that's all fine and good. Like, that's great. You're telling me to be positive and to drop it and to let it go. But you get caught in those old patterns of, either being afraid of loss, being afraid of what the future will hold from that. And I personally have found that doing a lot of meditations and doing a lot of vision boarding and doing a lot of just self-assessment on what I'm really attached to in my life and what I'm willing to let go of has been a game changer for me. Do you have a daily practice that you do? And how did that come about?
So in January of this last year, I decided that I needed to even be more religious about my own practice. So I wake up at 5:30 and I journal. And I've had since January a word that comes every day. And today was transform your health. And my summit is transform your health. So it's really about, and yesterday was surrender. And I mean, it's been a different word every day. There was one time, and I'm Jewish, it was Genesis, Psalm 1. Okay, so I had to look it up and I had to write it down. So it was the beginning of something. So I journal for generally about 10 minutes by candlelight because it's obviously dark at 5:30, although it won't be for much longer. And then after that, I meditate for either 20 minutes to a half hour. And then I either go to the gym or I exercise or I go for a bike ride or I walk. I'm in Florida for a couple of months because right now in Maine, you can't walk outside because it's so icy. So I'm methodical about doing these things, and I miss it if I don't do it. The other thing that's been very powerful for me is I listen when I'm walking or running or biking to Joe Dispenza every day as a reminder that my thoughts are just that I have the ability to change my thinking at any moment. And if I catch myself in the conscious mind thinking something that is not helpful, I have to change it because it's not my personality anymore. It used to be how I was, but it isn't how I am anymore. So it's really all about changing and being willing to change as you get older. And I think there's a myth, as you get older, you're kind of stuck in your ways. Oh my God, I hate that. It's like, are you serious? No, the brain is so plausible. It can change anything. So
I don't want to live by that. I don't want to live by getting old and slow and stuck in my thoughts. Like, that doesn't sound fun to me at all. Like, I told the teenagers I dance with in hip hop, I will still be here when I'm in my 80s. Like, I'm still going to be going to dance class. I'm still going to be pushing myself. I listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza every morning as well. And I have my little rubber band on my arm so that every time I say something that's limiting or where I'm telling my brain something that honestly isn't correct, it's just me being silly, I whap myself and I restate it again. And I do want to talk, I think you've met Dr. Joe and I want to talk about that, but I wanted to ask you, when you were saying that you meditate for 20 minutes, so I've been doing these meditations every day and I'm growing, right? I'm growing every day. I learn more. I get better and better and better at it. But it is very difficult to keep my focus on what I need to keep on. Like, things creep in and whatnot. And I know we're supposed to do 15 or 20 minutes a day. And I was thrilled because I did 5 minutes. I was like, woohoo, yay. How long did it take you to really hone in on that practice? Is it now easy for you to do 20 minutes or are you still having to redirect yourself? And what was that process? This was a question I actually had from someone in one of my memberships was, how do you get better at it? Because you kind of feel like a failure when you do it the first time in some respects. I mean, we know we don't say that to ourselves, but you do, because you're like, gosh, I can't even hold attention on meditation for a minute, nonetheless 20 minutes. How did you do it?
So I've been in this world probably longer than you've been alive. Many, many years ago, I was doing a self-esteem workshop at one of the expos in Boston, probably in 1986. So that tells you how long ago that was.
I was 10. I was alive. I was 10.
I mean? And it was with, it was on past life regression by Brian Weiss. And I had to do a workshop, but I had a couple of hours in between, and it was in a church, cold as hell in Boston. I was sitting on the floor thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? 4 hours later, I went, oh crap, I almost missed my lecture. That was my introduction to when you really go deep and you have somebody that's guiding you in a different way how to do it. Then I did TM, and I was doing it on a regular basis. So the whole notion about TM is you have a mantra, you come back. You have a mantra, you come back if you have a thought that goes away. For me now, it's automatic. I mean, I do 777 breathing to start myself. It's with candlelight, and sometimes I'll have some music on and sometimes I won't. And I have 3 goals for myself for the year that I have visuals of, and I start with those, and then I go where my mind goes. Since January, and this is such an interesting that I've never said this on camera, I have a lot of images or sounds that come to me, darling, and it's always darling. And it really guides me back to, darling, this is where we're headed, or darling, and I have that in the daytime as well. So I think when you just allow yourself the freedom to say, that thought doesn't help me. And part of what I've taught my people to do is, if they worry a lot, and I'm a part of a group that does osteoporosis, and they are such worry warts. Oh my God, they worry so much.
Yeah,
So
well, they've been told to worry about it,
I know, but it doesn't help. So I have them make, just like with meditation, they come back to that mantra. I have them take an hour every day if they need that much time to worry. So on a Monday, if they've used up that hour, then it goes to Tuesday and they have to write it down. So they then decrease the amount of time every day that they're worrying, because worry does nothing but increase cortisol. As you well know, has implications biochemically for every organ system in the body. So it's training oneself to say, oh, but you have to worry. You can't just say you're going to do it and not do it, because the body's very smart. It knows the difference. Yeah. And then you literally pull your list out and say, oh my God, what am I going to do about whatever? And it takes some of the edge off, but it takes a lot of practice. And I think that's what I would say, is it just takes practice and trusting yourself that you can do it, When we stay in the frontal cortex too much and we analyze everything and we're thinking about everything, and that doesn't help change anything. We have to really be willing to have times in our lives that we surrender, and dance taught me that. Plus, I also have 11 acres of land. I mean, there's deer in my backyard all the time, and there's fox and raccoons, and I live 5 miles from the big city. I mean, it's not like it's the boondocks. And that helps too, putting your feet on the ground, being grounded, and then just know it's going to be a process that will take you there.
That's cool. I have scorpions. That's like what I have in my backyard. Yeah, I need to figure out how to get some animals in my backyard other than my dogs who are snoring. I have one snoring next to me right now. It is funny because it's practice, and I think we do as a society get very much in our head because we're very intelligent beings. Oh, so we think we can think ourselves out of this. We can do all this research, and I see people do this with their health all the time. By the time they get to me and they're really starting to go, wow, I think stress is having an impact on me, or adrenals are having an impact, they're so in their head. They've done the research for everything. They've read all the books. They've done all the things, but there's no action because it's all in here, right? And a lot of the times what's stopping them from taking action is that they're not connecting to that beautiful heart chakra that they have. And when we go through, I know my story with my heart is all of the loss that I've experienced throughout the life. Losing my dad, losing my grandparents, losing my mom, losing the people that I had formed an identity to. That's who I was. I had never really said, who is Tricia on my own, standing on my own 2 feet. It was always, I'm so-and-so's daughter, or I'm this or that. And when the loss happened, there was a disconnect in who I really was. And it's taken a lot of work of just saying, okay, I have to stop thinking about this and trying to get over it. I have to really reconnect with my heart, reconnect with my soul, reconnect with who I am as a person, unapologetically. Whoever that is that shows up, and stop worrying so much about how it's said or where it's said or how it comes out, and part of the reasons I started this show is for that exact reason. I've spent my entire life living by script. What should be said? How should you look? How should you stand? What are you trying to portray for these other people? What are you trying to do? And because of that, lost a lot of voice chakra and connection with the heart, right? And people can say, wow, you're getting really metaphysical, or this is crazy. But I find, and I have no doubt you find this as well, the people that really do take the time to connect with their true selves, their true heart, their true energy, and they lead from there. They lead from that ability to serve or that ability to share. they see the most greatest successes in money, in health, in relationships, in life. And those that don't and continue to just try to think their way through it, they hit that roadblock and can't get over it. And I have people ask me all the time, how do I get rid of this cortisol response? How do I get rid of this stress response? How do I fix my hormones, my thyroid, my this? I mean, like, it comes from right here. If you don't have this, you're only going to hit a ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that with weight loss? Because you do weight loss.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all connected. The drops, the homeopathic drops, I think, get people on the path that they couldn't get off of before. And the biggest thing, if we kind of go to the weight loss piece, is people have enormous appetites for many different reasons. I think that's why Ozempic is so big. It's not a weight loss drug. It's an appetite suppressant, honestly. Let's call it like it is. But back in the day, when I first heard about the ACE study, my father actually was a psychologist working in Serbia, and also with Nazis and Jews, helping them kind of role play changes. And he found the ACE study in Europe, and then I got it. And I realized back then, although I'd grown up kind of believing it, that if we don't deal with our story will deal with us. And one of the chapters in my first book is Your Issues Are in Your Tissues. And it's hard to change that. It's taking a lot of understanding of, oh, I'm a perfectionist. Where did that come from? And how do I change that in my life? Because it's not serving me anymore. Really stay in touch with myself and not be so driven by my yesterday. And that takes understanding about yourself and also forgiveness, of forgiving yourself for, well, I did it because I needed to survive when I was a kid, but I don't need it anymore. I can let go of that and live life in a different way now. And that is what it's all about. And I think we never stop learning that. I think it's all about, how do we always grow every day? How do we change every day? How do we give the world the best of who we are? How do I live my life from a place of purpose? And it's hard with the world now. I mean, there's so much coming down. Yeah. And I was having a conversation with a girlfriend yesterday, and it's really about, I have to trust this process. I don't understand it, but I have to trust it, and I have to be true to myself and be as spiritual and kind as I can be, and then move that out as much as it's, really recognized in the world. That's all I can do.
That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. And doing this.
And connecting with other people. I think we've lost a lot of community as well in the age of social media and the age of connection, right? We're ironically the most connected we've ever been, yet the least connected we've ever been. And disconnected with ourselves, disconnected with the truth. It's hard to trust when we're always seeing everything in sound bites, right? And that could be anything. It could be news, it could be health, it could be, we're seeing little bits and pieces where we used to have conversations, full-on conversations over the dinner table, or where we would debate something and you would learn something new about somebody's different viewpoint, and whether you agreed with it or not, it was like, well, that's kind of cool. We've lost a lot of that. Everything's so quick. And we're building that in our, as you know as well, like as a fellow adrenal doctor, we're building that in our, basically into our DNA. We're keeping cortisol on the forefront, which is building us to want things in small little quick moments because we're too busy running. We don't have time to stop and have a conversation. We've got to just run. We've got another thing to do, got another place to go. And when you talked about food, I think when you said people eat, there's an emotion to that, right? There's a comfort to that. And you're right. When you're given a drug that will stop that appetite, you don't have that connection. But if we don't repair that connection and that relationship that we have with food, it doesn't last. I mean, I literally grew up in, when you're 6 feet tall, you're 110 pounds, this designer needs you to be, X 24-inch waist, you need to restrict your calories. At someone who's 12 or 13 years old, you need to restrict your calories. That's what I was told, right? Or you need to go on Weight Watchers, right? Which allows you to have a glass of, I look at Weight Watchers and the point system, and it's like, it doesn't take into account the nutrition in the food. It just takes into account the calories, right? So you could eat crap all the time because it's the same caloric density as something else. But I know in my generation, that's how we were raised. We were raised with restriction. The more you restrict, the more weight you lose, but then you feel deprived. And then diet and food becomes a hassle. It becomes something that you have to control. And I think a lot of us were kind of raised with that mindset. And I'm seeing a lot of my friends, in my age group struggling with diabetes, heart disease, weight gain, starting to go through perimenopause and having more symptoms than anyone else. I'm seeing a ton of food allergies, all of these things that are happening as a result of our relationship with food, or a poor relationship with food. So it's a really interesting thing as I look back, as I get older, and I go, oh, that wasn't right. Even the food pyramid was wrong.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Like, right? I don't even know have they even corrected the food pyramid, or is it's still like wheat and dairy on the bottom and like vegetables at the very top. Like, wait, something's wrong. And then the meat they show is like a huge steak, which I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying what's shown to us and what's taught to our children even is just, no wonder we're having a hard time connecting with ourselves. We're nutrition deficient. We have these weird relationships with what food is and what health is. And then we're living now in sound bites, right? We're not getting the full picture. It's crazy.
No, it's really crazy. There was years ago, I was doing a workshop on self-esteem, and my daughter was sitting on my lap, and I was a New Age mom, I was a Waldorf mom. We didn't have TV, blah, blah, blah. That was a long time ago. And she was sitting on my lap, and she started dancing when she was 2. She was a competitive dancer until she was in end of high school. And I was just rubbing her little legs, and I said, Katya, you have the most beautiful legs. And she sat up and she goes, no, Mommy, they're not thin like Barbie. She was 4. And I remember thinking then, and then we made a joke about it because we didn't have Barbies. Then I brought Barbies and I said, I'm thin like Barbie today, did that kind of stuff. And she's got a fine self-esteem now. But I was thinking that the model that we have for what women are supposed to look like is so ridiculous. And at the same time, it was something on Inside Edition. And Cindy Crawford, they had done some Photoshop on her leg because it was too large. And I thought, what are we saying to women? And my worry now is Ozempic has recreated what Twiggy did back in the day.
Yeah, and my mom worked with Twiggy. She was a model of that time. That's what she did. And yeah, it's funny because on the flip side, being one of the models that people would look at and say, oh yeah, well, I want to be thin like you, or I want to look like you, or I want to do. My self-esteem was horrible.
I know.
I did not believe that I was beautiful. I didn't have a light in my eye that I have now. I thought that I was ugly. I thought that nobody liked me. I thought that, because I was told that, which is horrible. But at that time, I was 1%, right? I was in the 1% of people where 13-year-olds are being subjected to that horrible world. And now we have social media where everybody's subjected to it. Everybody's subjected to judgment and criticism. But I started to realize as I get older, a lot of what I dealt with in that is what most people are dealing with right now. There is such a similarity, how we don't love ourselves, we don't find ourselves beautiful. And I think knowing that even since beauty is subjective, people may say, well, that's silly, Tricia. Like, you have the genetics, you have these beautiful genetics. I still didn't feel beautiful. So changing just that, or just changing the weight, or just changing getting the plastic surgery, or just changing this doesn't bring you the happiness you desire. It has to come from a place of self-love and a little bit of humor. Like, I love the Barbie part. I think that's great. I think there's so much to learn from that, because there's always going to be those external forces that you want to lean towards, right? And I don't know how we fix that in our children now with social media. I don't know. That's one of my biggest concerns as a parent. Luckily, I have boys, and my boys don't seem to be as concerned about it, but I do see my friends' girls who, everything's about that and posting themselves online with virtually no clothes on. Now, granted, I did swimsuits when I was 13 and I was on ads and whatever like that, but I don't know how we put a stop to that and still hold that self-worth. So if you're teaching seminars on self-worth and do you have any advice for parents out there for children?
I think that it starts at home, but it also starts in the school systems, because we're not teaching them about self-esteem.
Yeah.
And when I had my kids, we did a lot of things not related to the TV, and that was back in the day before we had all the stuff that we have now. And the good news for me, I have 2 boys and a girl as well. I have twins, but my daughter, we talk about it. I don't know if you remember going, when I was in university, I would walk around a certain place. It would take me 10 extra minutes because all the guys were lined up doing their cat calls. And she came to me one day and said, Mom, I don't, she's, she's a beautiful young girl. And it's like, well, woman now, just walk around, honey. It's too much bigger than you, and really understand that that's not who you are inside. So I've been talking with them for a lot of books, also talking with their teachers at school, because what they get at school is actually more powerful than what you're doing.
Yes.
So I was very, very careful about the education that they got. And, at the time I just did everything in my power to have a private education. So I knew their goal was self-esteem. Who are you as a person? How do we teach you how to think?
Yeah.
And that's really what it was all about. But I'm telling you, it's a tough one, Tricia, because how do we do that? It's going to affect them for the rest of their lives. It's going to affect them for the rest
And
of
we're
their lives.
seeing it in the health of our adolescents. We're seeing more anxiety. We're seeing more suicide. We're seeing more depression. We're seeing more attention issues. We're seeing more self-worth issues. And I think part of the reason I show up to my job every day, of course I help adults, but it's really just like the passion of me as a mom looking at our next generations and the health of the next generations, and really having a valid concern about that and trying not to worry about it, right? Because we're trying not to get those cortisol levels up, worrying about things that we don't have control over. But I think you're right. It's that communication. Once again, it's the community and the communication. One of the reasons that I attribute to me being successful in my life and not letting that industry take me down was I had a third party. I had my mom and my dad who were divorced, and I had a third couple that acted as grandparents. They were not related, but they were there for me no matter what. So when I was frustrated, when I was alone, because I was alone a lot. I was working. I was bringing in thousands of dollars a day at 13 years old. Like you just get dropped off on a set, by the way. It's like, have fun, take care, bring home the paycheck. So I had them to lean on. And the one thing that they always did, as I look back, is there was community. So they did these huge holiday parties where they invited neighbors and they invited people, and she played Santa Claus for kids that didn't have Santa Claus, and it might have been clients she was working with at the time, but everyone was invited, and she cooked meals and everyone sat together and talked, and we sang Christmas carols and we looked for Easter eggs, and she gave me a family, right? A connected community with people, and they could have been different every time. Those people could have been someone I'd never met before, and I'm playing with their kids, And I'm so thankful for that, because I do think if you're finding yourself alone and feeling alone, sometimes it's really hard to just kind of look around you and see how much support you actually have and how much community you actually have. We do actually have people there, and they may not be in your own family. These people were not in my own family. Just a lovely soul that my heart must have gravitated towards, and theirs gravitated towards mine, and I'm so thankful. And I miss them every single day, every day. But yeah, I think you're right. It's an interesting predicament of how we do that. I want to give you a moment because I think it's important. You do have an amazing product. As you talk about Ozempic and you talk about your passion with Ozempic, which I've said from the beginning, I'm not a fan of Ozempic. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about a medically, someone who's medically obese with chronic diabetes that needs that kickstart. I'm talking about the Hollywood version of Ozempic, where it's like, hey, just take this and you'll lose the weight. You don't have to change the habits. That, at my core, probably because of my upbringing and having all these yo-yo dieting my entire life, really irks me. But you have another solution.
Yes, I do.
And knowing homeopathic medicine like I do, and how much that does tie into the brain, like the connection in the body, I would love it if you would just take a second and tell people about this so that they can check you out.
Sure, absolutely. So back in 2009, I don't know if you remember that HCG,
Didn't like that one either. Yeah. At the time.
So I actually used it in my practice, and it was amazing. Everybody lost weight and everybody gained it back. Mm-hmm. And I realized at that time that I needed to find something that would work in the same way. And it's all the same thing. It's about appetite. Mm-hmm. How do I help people control their appetite, their cravings, and the noise of food? How do I help them with that? So I created a homeopathic that does not have any medications in it. There's no hormones in it. There's no stimulants in it. And there's no HCG. But what it does is it suppresses the appetite. It gives people the breathing room, because there's no noise of food, to be able to make some changes. And then I put them on basically an elimination diet. And 99% of my people lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks, 35 to 50 in 12. But what I do then is I take them through coaching to help them look at, are there times that they use food for comfort? Are there times that they have something called disinhibition, which is truly a genetic predisposition to not having that full kind of mechanism go on? And then I created a genetic profile so I can tell you, should you do low fat, low carb, Mediterranean, or balanced for the rest of your life? And then 70% of my people keep the weight off. So it's an option for people that are not diabetics, that need to lose 15, 20, 30 pounds even, or 40 perhaps, that don't have a medical condition that really warrants them being on Ozempic. My worry about Ozempic now is that the number of people that are having side effects is growing. We have 10,000 adverse events already reported, 165 deaths, but that's old news.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing more bone loss. We're seeing people that are young with bone changes. That's not a good thing. We're also seeing muscle loss. And what's really interesting for some people is they are having to have plastic surgery because they've lost so much fat that the actual tissue, according to some of the plastic surgeons, is different with less stem cells and less collagen. So if there's another way, wouldn't it be a better idea to do it in a way? And look, I don't want to tell people to go do a program like Weight Watchers or Diet Workshop or whatever the ones are out there now without some support, because it's points, macros, measuring, and women that have been doing it are so sick of doing that. It's like, are you kidding me? I've been here, done that, don't want to do it again.
And it becomes an obsession. It's like everything you put in your mouth, you have to count everything, which for me was a serious issue because it would put me in bad relationships with food, because it was like, oh, I can't have you, you're bad, you're so many points, or you're so many. And I think food is meant to be nutrition. That's all it is for our body. It's to fuel us. That's it. But we do have these emotional connections. Do you have a food that you grew up on that you had to somewhat reframe that connection to?
Probably for me, it was my mom's Dutch, my dad was Hungarian, so she always made home-cooked meals. We never, ever, ever, even when we came to America, had store-bought them. And she would make desserts every night, but I didn't really eat them. Sugar's not my gig.
Yeah, mine neither.
It'd probably be more bread, that kind of thing. And now I make gluten-free bread. But it was never my gig. But I think when I was growing up, I was really thinking that I was overweight. Coming to America, I had hoop skirts on. I went from 4th grade to 6th grade. Everybody was doing makeup. I didn't even know what it was. And I was in the outback coming to a city. It was like, oh my God. So reacclimating, and then Twiggy came out. So I was never, ever, and I will never be a skinny Mimi. It's just not my genetic profile. It's not going to ever be that. But there is something to be said for always, you're too fat, too skinny, too tall, too thin, your boobs are too big, they're too small. It's like, when are we enough?
We're always enough. Always. We are always enough, however we were put on this earth. Always. Yes. Yeah. And by the way, I was tall, so nobody asked me out in high school. Everyone's like, wow, you were so beautiful. I would go off and shoot for Nordstrom's and come back to class, makeup up, beehives, whatever. Nobody ever asked me out because I was weird. I was tall and lanky and odd looking and doing things that maybe, so it's so funny because we all have, you say you came and you were wearing hoop skirts or whatever. We all walk into these environments and we're like, oh my God, we're the weirdest person here. And now I just embrace the weird. I love being weird. I love being different. I think it's my favorite thing about me. I never really know what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do. And that's kind of fun. That's fun. Anyway, that's funny. So I was always attached to bread as well. And Audrey, who was this grandmother person, used to make homemade fettuccine Alfredo, and she would make the pasta and everything. And I love pasta.
That's too high in carbs.
Right? And everyone's like, you can't eat it. And it's funny because later in life, when I did do my health dive, I have genes for celiac. I think I stopped eating gluten soon enough that it never officially turned on. But so I've been gluten-free for so long and found out I was drastically allergic to dairy, right? So one of the first things I had to let go of was homemade fettuccine Alfredo, right? Now I've come up with my alternate version with a cashew cream sauce and all these vegetables and this awesome, amazing gluten-free pasta and whatever. But yeah, most people would say that's too many carbs. You can't eat that, right? But whole food is different than processed food. And I think when you get to that point where you look at it as nourishment for the body and you're moving and you've made that flip, maybe you've lost the weight you need to lose for you to feel comfortable. And then it is amazing how much more you actually can start to eat, but how you also don't overeat.
And that's where the noise of food comes in. You know, I think that's what everybody talks about. Oprah certainly did about Ozempic. The noise of food went away for her. And I think it's that noise of that's good, that's bad, that's too many calories, that's not. It's really learning to trust your body, to trust yourself, and also knowing that you want to have whole foods. You don't want to have prepared foods. You don't want to have preservatives in your food, but you want to have real food, but it has to be look delicious and taste delicious, and not a piece of chicken and steamed, you know, beans or something.
And asparagus, yeah. Asparagus and salmon. Oh my God. You know, I don't want to eat that.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
sometimes, yeah. Yeah. And I think also another thing on the Ozempic before we wrap that up is, you know, I look at that as a doctor. And I say, okay, we're managing insulin levels, right? We're playing with insulin levels. We're playing with signaling in the brain to the endocrine system. What does that do to the adrenal system? What does that do to the thyroid? What does that do to our hormones, right? And when we start to get the imbalances over here, it's going to cause imbalances in every other area of our endocrine system. And if we're living in a stress response, because one, we're starving, we're running from bears in life and we have no fuel, right? We're going to keep that level of cortisol up, which is going to actually prevent the weight loss and cause more stress on the body, which is going to cause the regain. And I think a lot of people forget about that. They lose the weight, but there's something that's changed physiologically in their endocrine system for the regain at that point. So, yeah, I'm definitely on your train to find other ways for people to do this. And I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to do that. And I'm also so grateful that you just came here and we just chatted. It was great.
That's really what it's all about, is really kind of doing a conversation, because, you know, everybody might put us on a pedestal. It's like, oh, if you only understood. It was not that way.
It was not. Yeah, it's about that resilience and that overcoming, and about taking these moments when in the moment are hard and you can't figure your way out, looking back on them and saying, wow, that was a major growth moment for me to help other people. And you are helping thousands and thousands of people, probably because you let that go.
I did let that go. Exactly. And now, ironically enough, it's going to come back this year. How interesting.
And probably an even better version. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited for you. Well, before we sign off, one, how can people find you? And two, do you have any final thoughts for the audience from today?
They can find me at my website, marcellepig.com. I have a YouTube channel, and of course I have also podcasts and Instagram as well, but the podcasts are just getting reenacted again. And my final thought is, no matter where you are in your journey, understand that there's another side to it. And I think people feel hopeless sometimes, and being hopeless, you just need to find teeny little things to be grateful for and then work on those every day. Even if it's the roof over your head and that I can breathe today, or I have clothes to wear, I have food on the table, even small, tiny little things like that. And then develop, and we women are terrible at this, but doing self-care. Journaling, meditating. If you can't meditate, then maybe meditation is dance or something else for the time being. We are not all meant to do the same thing. So finding out where your joy level is. For me now, it's a new routine I have, but for other people, it might be something else. And dance is certainly a form of meditation.
Oh, for sure. One of the best. And yeah, and to follow up on that, finding what you used to do as a kid when you found yourself alone that brought you joy. Start with that. Because a lot of people say, I don't know what it was. Go back and think about it. Did you draw? Did you play with your dolls? I used to build all sorts of houses for my Barbies, and I love interior design now. It's like one of my favorite things. So if I'm like in a room and I feel kind of like, ugh, I just move something. I move a picture, I push a couch, a couple, things, because that's just what I used to do as a kid. And I would just create a new environment. I mean, why not? Like, you use your imagination and go back to what you were as a kid, and the gratefulness of little things. I hope, first of all, that everyone listening, I'm very grateful for you taking the time just to be here and to just learn something new and be open to something new and open to other people's experiences. I'm grateful that I've been here for the last almost hour with this beautiful, incredible, inspirational woman. I'm so grateful for you. And just spend every day remembering that there's always one thing you can be grateful for. And if it can be that you just showed up for yourself, that is something to be so incredibly proud of and so incredibly grateful for. So I'm going to sign off, even though I could sit here with you all day, but thank you so much for being here.
Very welcome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.